This is chapter 4, The Flight. Here's a picture, an illustration of him taking to the air. Flying into Neverland. Where is Neverland? Asked Wendy. Second to the right and straight on till morning, Peter shouted back. But Peter said anything that came into his head, so this was no help to Wendy. Putting all their trust in Peter, the three children flew over the sea with no idea how long they'd been flying or where on earth they were. Sometimes it was dark and cold, and sometimes it was light and warm. They were all very sleepy, and this was dangerous because the moment they dozed off, they dropped like stones towards the sea. Luckily, Peter rescued them whenever this happened, but Wendy worried he might get bored of this game. Unlike Wendy and her brothers, Peter could sleep in the air without falling. He was so light that he just lay on his back and floated. You must be nice to him, Wendy said to John and Michael. Think how lost we'd be if he left us. Peter had left them for a moment, and they felt lonely up in the sky by themselves. He could go much faster than they could, and he would suddenly shoot out of sight. Sometimes when he returned, he did not remember them. After a long time they drew near to Neverland, and Peter said calmly, There it is. Wendy, John and Michael stood on tiptoe in the air to get their first sight of the island. They had all dreamt of Neverland, but to see it like this was quite different. The roar of the beasts of prey frightened them now because they were not sure that they would win a fight against them, and they always did in their dreams. At home, Neverland had been make-believe, but it was real now, and there were no night lights, and it was getting dark at every moment, and Nana was nowhere to be seen. They huddled close to Peter now. His careless manner had gone at last. His eyes were sparkling, and a tingle went through them every time they touched his body. They don't want us to land, he explained. Who are they? Wendy whispered, shuddering. Pirates, Peter replied, and their captain is Hook. Michael began to cry, and even John found it hard to speak because they knew Hook's reputation. He's the worst pirate of them all, whispered John. I cut his right hand off, said Peter, and you must promise me that if we ever meet him, you will let me fight him alone. Tink had been flying around them in circles as they spoke, and they all suddenly realized that the pirates must be able to see them because of her light. Tell her to put out her light, Wendy begged. She can't put it out. It only goes out when she falls asleep, said Peter. Then tell her to fall asleep, ordered John. She can't fall asleep unless she's sleepy, Peter replied. But if we had a pocket, we could carry her in it and hide her light that way. This gave John an idea, and he suggested carrying Tink in his hat. She agreed to this, hoping that Peter would be the one to carry her. But in the end, Wendy took the hat. Tinker Bell hated being carried by Wendy, because Peter liked her so much, and Tink really did not want to share him. As they flew towards the island, the jealous fairy began to think of ways of stopping Wendy from reaching Neverland. They flew on in silence until there was the most tremendous crash, and they knew the pirates had fired a cannon at them. Its roar echoed through the mountains and seemed to cry, "Where are they? Where are they? Where are they?" When at last the skies were calm again, John and Michael found themselves floating alone in the darkness. No one had been hit, but Peter had been carried far out to sea by the wind from the shot, and Wendy had been blown upwards with Tinker Bell. It would have been best if Wendy had dropped the hat at that moment. Full of jealousy, with a dark plan in her mind, Tink flew back and forth and seemed to be saying, "Follow me and all will be well." Wendy called to Peter and John and Michael, but she only heard echoes of her own voice in reply. She had no idea what to do, and so tired and confused, Wendy followed Tink to her doom.